All right, guys. So the first question we got was on hip shoulder separation, asking, how much did you have? How do you create it, etc. Pretty much anything to do with hip shoulder separation. Um, so what I want to start this talk with is, or start this answer with, is that not all hip separation or hip shoulder separation is created equal. So what we're looking at right here is a picture from an article by Max Schmarzo talking about some concepts from Franz Bosch, specifically muscle slack. I'll definitely recommend looking into Bosch's full book if this is something that you want to learn more about. But what we can see this demonstrating is the slack in the muscle here, and then transitioning into lack of muscle slack in the muscle here. So we can see that this athlete or the skeleton's lower leg is going through the running cycle. And in this picture here, his lower leg is closer to his upper leg, and then it's slowly getting further away from this upper leg, and that tension in the rope is actually increasing and actually decreasing the muscle slack that's present. So what that does is tighten that muscle so that it can then grab and propel you forward. So the reason that not all hip shoulder separation is created equal is because different athletes have different amounts of muscle slack. And we'll actually go into three different examples here. First, we're going to look at Jordan Hicks. So Hicks is our example of a guy who is wound pretty tight. He doesn't have a lot of muscle slack, so therefore he needs less range of motion in order to get his muscles to pull on each other. And I'll explain it here as we go through it. So there's the video in full. But what we can see is that Hicks doesn't get all that much hip shoulder separation, right? Right about there, we can see that his pelvis is fully open, or it's as open as he's going to get, and his upper half, or his torso, has actually started to open quite a bit, or quite a substantial amount at this point. So we can see that when that front leg is actually weight bearing, and he's bracing, and he's creating energy against that front leg, he doesn't actually have that much hip shoulder separation, yet he's the hardest thrower in the MLB right now. So this is an example of a guy who, like, as he's working from here to there, he's pulling the slack out of the system. So the slack is running from this bottom leg here up through his front shoulder, and then from his front leg here up through his back shoulder. And as his pelvis opens, he's tightening and reducing the slack across his body here on this line. The reason that he doesn't have quite as much hip shoulder separation, and again, I don't know Hicks, I haven't evaluated him, but from what I'm seeing here and from what I've noticed from athletes that we've worked with, is guys who tend to throw hard with less hip shoulder separation are tighter athletes, so they don't have to move as much to pull that slack out. And that's what I'm trying to demonstrate here with Hicks, is that he doesn't need his arm, he doesn't need his shoulders to be turned back more than they are here, because what that would do is put him outside of his actual optimal range from which to accelerate from. So he would actually, his muscle wouldn't be able to grab as well as it does in this position here. So that's Hicks. He's an example of a guy who is very tight. Here is Lance McCullers, who is actually the complete opposite. And we can see as he gets into foot plant right about there, we can see how much more hip shoulder separation he has when we compare it to Hicks here on the left. I'll just have to make this a little bit smaller. Right, but that's a pretty significant difference between the amount of or the amount of hip shoulder separation Lance McCullers here has on the left. We can see that his pelvis is open, his shoulder is turned back, whereas Hicks, his pelvis is even somewhat closed, right? It's still open, but it's somewhat closed. He's striding across his body, and his shoulders are even more open. So we can see how much more slack McCullers here has to take out in order to create that same amount of tension. Because by taking out the slack, right, by taking the slack out of the system, that's going to then allow it to grab and accelerate his arm forward. If he weren't to take the slack out of the system, he wouldn't be able to accelerate it as forward as quickly, right? So again, this is a pretty drastic difference between two guys that throw with very high velocities, having to take different amounts of slack out of their system, and as a result, having different amounts of hip-shoulder separation. If we look at one more example, this is Verlander. He's kind of in the middle. Skip forward. Right, so he's not He doesn't need as little as Hicks, but he also doesn't need as much as McCullers. He's a guy who is pretty average in terms of the amount of hip-shoulder separation he gets. Right, his pelvis is open. We don't see his shoulders turned drastically back like we do with McCullers. Right, if we compare that to what we see with McCullers and even Hicks, right, we can see that Verlander's kind of Verlander is right in that middle range, and all three of these guys throw very hard. Right, so just saying, hip shoulder separation is something that you need more of or something that you need less of isn't really something that we do. It's a matter of looking at your structure and then using that to determine how much is actually going to be most beneficial for you, depending on how much muscle slack you need to pull out to be able to produce force at optimal length. So, two things that we'll use are right here. Number one is our hip internal rotation test. So this is just looking at how much range of motion you have in that rear hip, and this is going to help us determine actually how much or what the optimal range of hip-shoulder separation is going to be for you, among other things. We'll use this as well as a thoracic spine rotation test, which we'll look at next, but I'll go ahead and let this play for you.
For the hip internal rotation, we're going to test both active and passive. So what you're going to see first is the passive test. So you're going to be laying on the ground. You're going to grab your knee with the opposite side arm. So you can see here my right knee is up, grabbing it with my left hand. Then I'm going to grab right beneath my foot here, so right on the ankle, on the inside part, with the same side hand. Then I'm going to hold that knee stable and push out with that other hand, seeing how much internal rotation I have at the hip. So that's the passive test. Actively, we're going to get something like a broom handle or a dowel rod and support ourselves with that. We're going to bring our leg up. Then we're going to actively take it into internal rotation, just like that.
So that is what we'll use for hip internal rotation. And then the second part of that, and again, these are just small parts of our full physical evaluation, but these are two that you can use to really look at your hip your hip shoulder separation, because this is really isolating your hip internal rotation and comparing that to your actual thoracic spine rotation range of motion.
For the seated T-spine rotation, you're going to need something like a dowel rod or a broom handle. Then what you're going to do is sit on the edge of a bench, pinch your knees together, put the dowel rod or broom handle across your chest like you're in a front grip. Then you're going to rotate to the right as far as you can, and then to the left as far as you can, keeping your knees together and pointing straight forward the whole time.
So by using the combination of those two tests, we're going to be able to see how loose or how tight of a mover you are. And then as a result of that, we're going to be able to better determine how much hip-shoulder separation you need in order to create optimal velocity for your specific structure. I want to take the time to thank you guys for, number one, asking questions, number two, being willing to learn and watch these full responses. Then number three, also to say, if you want more of this type of content, this is something that we produce for our athletes every single week. So if you want training from us, if you want more content from us, I would highly recommend you sign up for our remote training program. I can be reached via email for that at brady@dacbaseball.com, or just send me a DM through either Twitter or my Instagram social media profiles.